Hello and welcome to our webinar on getting your organization AI ready. Over the next hour, we'll be looking at different aspects of intelligent automation and AI for procurement, covering best practice, how to prepare for AI, and the benefits it will bring to an organization. This will build into a picture of how to do business in the new world where companies are increasingly embracing the digital workforce. My name is Rob Jones, partner at B2B Connect, and joining me are Georg Rösch, Vice President, Product Management at Jaggaer, and Julian Howard, Director of Alliances and Channels EMEA at EdgeVerve. Before I hand over to Georg, who will kick off the webinar, we encourage questions. These can be typed at the bottom of your screen in the Q&A function. Please keep them brief, and we'll get to them towards the end of the webinar.
All right, thank you so much, Rob. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I would like to discuss getting your organization AI ready. So I will focus more on the procurement aspect of this, and later on, Jake will give you a more detailed description of how this can be done overall, but let me focus more on the procurement aspect of this. So, as with every research today that's being done, it all starts with a Google search, right? So this is how we all start. And honestly, this is also how I started for this presentation. So what I did is I simply entered AI in procurement. And when you do that, you will find the incredible number of more than 50 million entries on Google regarding this topic. So I believe we can all agree that that it is a hot topic, and I would say rightfully so. There is really a lot of things that can be done by using these types of new technologies. So with that, I would like to really now welcome you and tell you what it is that we're going to discuss today. So at the first part of what we're doing here that I'm going to present is I want to give you like 4 different pieces of information. First of all, what's the art of the possible of using those types of technologies in the procurement space? Then I want to give you a status quo of where procurement organizations are today. Yeah? Then we're going to focus on the journey for companies like you who are on this journey. What are the different steps that needs to be taken and so on. And I would like to close out with some key takeaways here. Okay. So and then I'm going to pass it back to Jake, who will then do the more generic part of how these technologies can be used. So let's kick it off with the art of the possible. I brought like 6 examples, okay, of what is possible today already. I would like to start with something that we call recommendation engine. So here the idea is that the system is clever enough to understand the data and how you usually behave when some patterns arise to recommend next steps of what it is you can do, right? This can be trivial, but help you in terms of do things faster. Like, hey, you have like 3 RFQs that have a deadline for tomorrow, but you didn't receive any quotes. What would you like to do? Would you like to extend the deadline? Would you like to remind the suppliers or something else? And the system learns from your behavior that up to the point where you can really, the system makes the decision for you because he knows how you react in certain cases, okay? The next thing is AI technology enables us to look a little bit into the future. So an example of what we have here is, we call it on-time delivery prediction. So we have vast amounts of data in the system from all of your POs that you had in the past, and we have the goods receipt date. And the system checks this information for you and can then do some predictions. These are like, I believe it's like 50 different data points that we have here per record, which says this supplier, this plant, this category, this product, this time of year, whatever, right? So it's really a lot of information. And with this technology, we are able to predict up to more than 90% accuracy if something that you order for a particular date will be on time or late or early or whatever. And then Combining this again with the recommendation engine, you can decide what it is you want to do. Do you need to shift some dates? Do you need to get in contact with the supplier to expedite it? Whatever. Yeah, but this is this type of enabling technology that you could use here. Another thing is the intelligent award navigator. So basically think about it like an assistant that helps you to find the best combination of how you can award your business. This is especially true for very, very complex sourcing events. Think about some categories like transportation or packaging, where you probably have thousands of line items in your RFP, and you probably have, I don't know, 30, 50, 100 different vendors in there. The intelligent award navigator asks you questions, and based on your answers to those questions, it finds the best possible scenario for you to award this business. Okay, it can tell you, I don't know, everything that goes from that region to that region should go to that supplier. Everything going from here to there should go to that supplier, and so on and so forth. This takes an immense amount of data and also an immense amount of time to really work on this manually, and the intelligent award navigator is clever enough to help you in doing all of that. Another thing is, and I believe Jake is gonna discuss on this a little bit as well, is what we call contract risk analysis. When you think about it, how does it work today? Whenever you engage with a new supplier, completely new, so net new supplier, or just an important new project, you have a lot of legal paperwork. And usually what happens is you take that paperwork, forward it to your internal legal team, and then they need to basically read the whole document, have a lot of notes and stuff like that. And this takes a lot of time because especially the legal teams is a pretty, first of all, it's an expensive resource. And second of all, it's usually a bottleneck in a lot of organizations. What contract risk analysis does, it reads those contracts, understands those contracts, and highlights automatically which clauses of this contract are in line and which ones are not in line. And I believe that's that's a huge time saver, because then your legal department can only focus on the things that are not in line, okay? So that the system automatically flagged red somehow and says, hey, there's caution there. So that's a huge time saver. Another thing which kind of fits to the on-time delivery prediction is predictive analytics in general. So we do have a lot of customers that try to look into the future of how their spend is going to change based on certain parameters. Like, you know that you are somehow dependent on certain goods that you buy in certain currencies. So those exchange rates, how will they fluctuate in the future, has a huge impact on what you're doing. Probably you buy something that's based on an index. Yeah, how will this index change? Yeah, just think about oil, think about plastics, which is bound to the oil price, or some other commodities, steel. I don't know, whatever you're buying might have a huge impact. And we take this data, combine it with your internal data, and then do some predictions. Okay, how will your spend change over time? Okay. On this influence, and you can do some what if analysis. So what would happen if, like, I don't know, the dirham to US dollars exchange rate would change by 5% up or down? How would that influence your spend? Okay, and this is what you can then really check in the system. And the last example that I have here is what we call the Smart Assistant. The Smart Assistant is a new way of actually working with the system. It changes your user experience in a way that you can actually talk to the system or write to the system and get some responses. This can be used for navigation, can be used for help, but it can also be used to really do some actions in the system, like create new sourcing events and so on. And I believe in the future, the combination of something like the recommendation engine and the Smart Assistant has very big potential, because the system will trigger you and tell you, just like an assistant would in your organization, hey, there are RFQs, they run out tomorrow. We don't have quotes yet. What is it that you would like to do? And then this pops up with the Smart Assistant, probably in the future, just as, I don't know, a WhatsApp message probably. And you can just type, yeah, extend deadline, hit enter, and that's it. And the system is doing that for you. So I can see a lot of potential in these areas. So what I would like to showcase with these few examples is there are really exciting possibilities by using new types of technology in the whole scope of procurement, okay? But now let's focus on where we are today. So I would like to invite you all to sit back and relax and watch a movie here, because I would like to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly of where I see procurement today, okay? And how those technologies are used today and how fit you are to use those technologies, okay? So let's start with the good, okay? The good is, most of you want to invest in some sort of digital procurement. You understand the benefits of this, what it brings to your organization. That's the good thing. The bad, unfortunately, is that you believe you're further along in your digitalization journey than you really are. And I have the data to prove it. I will show it on the next slide. And now to come to the ugly, which is really you lack some very foundational abilities, unfortunately. And we're going to discuss this in the next couple of minutes, why that is. So first of all, what I believe is really important to understand is how aggressive are procurement organizations in the adoption of new technology. And we did a survey last year, and I brought you the results here on the right-hand side. So what you see, which of these digitalization topics is your company planning to invest in? And unfortunately, what you see here, there's a lot of red in here. And red basically means there are no investments plans in that area. And actually, it's only 2 things that are in here that have more than 50%, where it's either already done, currently in progress, or at least planned for the next 3 years, which is predictive analytics and Internet of Things. These are like the only 2 areas where organizations say, yes, this is something that, that you're interested in. On the other hand, when you look at the procurement projects that we're doing with our customers, most of them, they attack problems that were already done 20 years ago. Yeah. So, I mean, sourcing in itself was solved 20 years ago. E-auctions were solved 20 years ago. Electronic data interfaces with your suppliers was solved 30 years ago. Okay. But this is still the main topics that we usually see whenever we do a procurement project. So, when you're actually done with the project, yeah, congratulations, you have now a new Nokia communicator, okay? So this is how I would rate usually procurement projects that are being done today. It doesn't focus on anything new and anything disruptive, I would say. It focuses a lot on things that are things of the past. And I hopefully, we can all agree that we would not like to work with something like a Nokia communicator, okay? But this is really where I see procurement being today. Now, but this was the bad news that I gave you right now. But what is the journey actually? And from a procurement point of view, there is usually these 4 steps in your digitalization journey that I would like to highlight. So the first step that I have here is what we call automated procurement. In automated procurement, it simply means you digitize your content, okay? You have all your spend under management, yeah? The mundane processes are basically automated and you have full data transparency. This is like really the first step of what you need to do. Without that, you can't do anything, okay? So you need to get away from all of your offline information that you have. The next step that we have here is what we call digital procurement. Digital procurement is now the software assists you, okay? So the software tells you something, okay? It gives you some predictions based on machine learning algorithms. So it basically tracks your data that you have in the system. It gives you some recommendations. They are probably rule-based, yeah? We have the smart assistant where you can somehow communicate with the system. And we have data integration to different buckets and silos of information that are probably out there. Okay, so that's the next step. So here the system assists you in terms of providing you or feeding you information. The next step is what we call intelligent procurement. Here is this the first time where the system does some work for you. Okay, so it's a huge step. Okay, because now you have like demand predictions in there. Okay, you have some automation in there. You have this contract compliance automation, as I said before. You have supply chain automation. Very important for a lot of organizations to have a very high, we call it like the no-touch ratio whenever it comes to your supply chain, right? So how often do you need to interfere in the process of a purchase order, okay? Or is it fully automatic? How often do you need to interfere with an electronic invoice, and so on and so forth? And here is also a lot of use of RPA technology. So an RPA is basically a system that helps you to do certain things automatically. These are usually tasks that are very repetitive. They don't need a lot of decision making by a human being that can be done fully automated. And this is also what you have a lot in intelligent procurement. And then finally, and this is honestly where we as a procurement software vendor are currently working on these areas, is what we call autonomous procurement. So what can we totally automate here without any human intervention, okay? This is not to replace the buyer from his current job. This is not what it does, but it should augment the human being and really do the stuff automatically, like sourcing automation or a strategy advisor that the system can do. So basically use the system more like a sparring partner here, and it does certain things alone because you can trust the system that it does the right thing, okay? So those are the 4 steps that we usually have here. Now, if I would rate the companies that I know, I would say most of you are probably here on the very beginning, because there is a 5th step that I usually don't show, but let's talk about it today. I call it the ERP-driven procurement. So what you basically do is you use a system internally, but it does not really do everything that you want, right? It only helps you to organize yourself to be a little bit better, but there is a lot of information that doesn't even fit into an ERP system. So where would you put your category strategy in an ERP system? Where would you put your supplier strategy in an ERP system? You simply don't have that, right? And most of it is you have it electronically, but then you send it out via email, and there is no real connection to those emails once this comes back. This is true for POs. This is true for RFQs. Most of you, even though you have an ERP system, probably won't even run your RFX events out of the ERP system. This will be all done via email. And of course, what I have done here, you will be very Excel based. I mean, this is what I see a lot is that something like, let's say, like approved vendor lists, are managed on Excel sheets that are stored probably on a shared drive somewhere, where I know what are my usual vendors that I use in these certain categories. Okay, so very, very Excel based. So now I could say, all right, I understand, but what can I do to come the quickest to autonomous procurement from where we are today? And there are some very good examples of something, of some things that went pretty quick, especially this year, because as we all know, sometimes all it takes is a pandemic to come something from what we see on the left-hand side to something that we see on the right-hand side. And I mean, I have 2 kids on my own, and this is their reality. So in less than 2 months, they totally transformed the schooling from in-class to what we call here distance learning, right? So there are some ways when it's necessary to change pretty quickly. And I would say especially the MENA region is very, very good in doing some things very, very quickly, okay? So one could be inclined to say, okay, what we should do is we should leapfrog somehow, okay? So jumping from the first step that we had on there ultimately to the 4th step in one go. Unfortunately, you can't. I'm really sorry that I have to say this. This will most likely not work, okay? You have to build the necessary foundations. You need to have clean data. It all comes down to the 3 very common things that you need to think about: people, processes, and technology. These are the 3 things, or technology equals data in that part. These are the main drivers here. So I would like to not discuss the people aspect today, but let me tell you that change management is something that's really, really important to do this right. But let's focus on the other two things. Let's focus on the data and the process part. So just think about the data. There is this century-old saying, probably, garbage in, garbage out. So when you have garbage in, you will get garbage out. But what we're striving for is automation, right? So it's not just like a report that you run and you feed in like bad information or not accurate information, I should say. And then you get out the same pile of garbage. No, it becomes worse. You will get out way more garbage. So you have to be really careful. I said the word trust before. You need to trust the system. And you can only trust the system if you trust the data that you feed into the system. This is really a very basic first step, but it's so important to understand. It's not like a report that you fill with wrong data and then you get out wrong data. If you want the system to make decisions, you need to be really, really keen on having the right information. It's so important, okay? Then let's talk about the process. I found this super interesting formula here. PP plus NT equals EPP. I heard this, I believe, the first time probably 5 or so years ago from the CPO from BASF, so one of the largest chemical vendors out there. I don't know if he's really like if he has the copyright on it or not, or if he was the first person. But what does it actually stand for? And this is so important. It stands for poor process plus new technology equals expensive poor process. Okay, I can't stress this enough. You cannot continue working as you do today and just plunge new technology on top of it because it won't bring you any benefit. So you have to be smart about it. So think about how you can use new technology, how it can help you, and how you would need to adjust your processes. If you continue with the same processes, it will just be expensive and won't bring you a lot of benefit. Okay, so this is really important. So again, this is, from my point of view, the journey. So at first step, digitize your content. Yeah, and an Excel spreadsheet is not digitized content. Yeah, it needs to be in a system. The next step is let the system help you in terms of giving you information, providing you information. The next step then is the system assists you. It does some simplistic tasks automatically, which should free up resources for you already. But then eventually you should come to autonomous procurement in terms of that certain things are fully automated and you have to interfere with it at all. And this is really what we're striving for, because then it's much easier to roll it out globally. You can be sure that the whole world is doing the same thing according to your central guidelines. All right, so what are the key takeaways of all of this, of what I just told you? Again, I brought it down to 6 different things. Number 1 is standardization. It's so important that you don't reinvent the wheel all the time. There are standards out there. And yes, I know every company is special and every company is a little bit different. But this is so important that you use standards whenever they exist. Okay, this is number 1. Number 2 is digitalization. I also said this before, you need to bring all your data that you have into what we call like the central data lake, because it will help with pattern recognition, and everything that you have is somehow connected to something else, right? So your spend alone doesn't tell you the full story. It's your spend, your supplier scorecarding, it's your different RFP event results that you received. All of this combined will give you the full picture. This is why it's so important to bring all of this into the system. The next thing, and I believe not a lot of people think about that, is the know-how. You need to transfer what is in the brains of your procurement people somehow into the system. This can be to some extent rule-based. That's absolutely fine. That you simply know whenever this is what I do, right? So this can this is something that you really have to do. Yeah. The next one is common goals. It's so important. Digitalization usually is not like one project, right? It's not just one thing that you do. It's multiple different initiatives, but they all need to align to the same goal, right? So I would really prefer to start at the top in the things of defining the why. Okay, why do you want to do all of this? Okay, and if you lay out this groundwork, then you start the bottom-up approach, but always with the why in mind. And this is how you can align the goals of those different work streams in your digitalization journey. Time, it's so important. And this is why I also say the time is now when to start. Especially AI-based systems, they need time to learn. Okay, so you need to have your first baby steps where you start. It's just like your kids, yeah, right? So your kids don't start in university, yeah? They start in kindergarten, then elementary school, middle school, high school, and so on. So this is also the way you have to think about those systems, yeah? Of how this needs to be done. This is why personally I like those four steps so much, because this is really how you need to follow. Yeah, bring the data in, get some info if your data is correct, because it's very easy to see that. The next step is automate something that's quite simple, and then go to the hard parts. Yeah, so time is really important for you. Yeah, and this is why I personally believe that leapfrogging is not really an option here. And then finally, learn from your mistakes. It's absolutely fine if you make mistakes. So be sure to have the guardrails that whenever something goes wrong, that you notice immediately. There is this saying like, fail fast, fail often. And this is what you want to do here, because you will learn from those mistakes. So this continuous improvement program has to be in place. And you should have a culture where it's okay to fail. That's absolutely fine. All right. All right, and finally, bringing this all together, I found a very nice quote that I really like. It's from Charles Darwin. It says, "It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change." And if we change that to our space, so I simply say it's not species, it's businesses, this is really where I think we are. So you might be the strongest in your field today. You might be the most intelligent, but you need to be adaptive, okay? This is so important, that you really think about how the industry is gonna change and how you're gonna do that in the future. All right, with that, I would like to thank you very much and give it back to Rob.
Thank you, Georg, for a very interesting presentation. And Georg will be joining us again a little later when we get to audience Q&A. If you have a question, please remember you can type it into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We now move to Julian Howard, Director of Alliances and Channels, EMEA at EdgeVerve.
Thank you, Georg, and thank you, Rob. Let me start off my presentation by telling you that this is an extremely exciting period of time in technology. And one of the things Georg just mentioned there is about change. And I wasn't going to talk about this because I think time is of the essence. But when I started the IT industry, it was in 1979, and I was taught to do punch card operations for an IBM mainframe. And I was told that this would be a job for life. Well, that job lasted for actually 6 months before I was asked to become a Pascal programmer, and online transaction processing came in. So the change has been relentless throughout my career, and that's been terribly exciting. And the reason why I'm no longer a unemployed assembler punch card operator is because we have to be adaptive to that change and move on and acquire new skills. And I'm absolutely thrilled at this point in my career to be in RPA, artificial intelligence, intelligence automation, and it's a thrilling place to be. So it is an exciting topic, and one which is available in product form today. This is not a future talk, and this is not a talk about one day we may be able to. This is about stuff that's available today. So in my talk, I hope to excite you as well on this potential of unleashing the power of procurement through intelligent automation, and to do this by providing a reasonably high-level discourse of the intelligent automation journey. It is a journey. I completely agree with Georg. This is not a leaping frog, and it's about step by step, because the last thing you want to do is automate your mess for less. Okay. Right. So, as automation technology has become more sophisticated, it is able to do more and deliver greater value to companies. Taking advantage of the full extent of this value and implementing automation in an enterprise is a journey. And it starts from a process discovery to a human and digital workforce. And that process discovery is fundamental. And as Georg said, the PP plus NT equals EPP paradigm is extremely important. And a good portion of my talk will be about that. This journey is not without its challenges, and it's important for companies to define effective strategies and tools early in the process to set a foundation for success. The tools and skills are key to this success. However, there is a warning. It's an apocryphal warning. It's a tale of the amateur artisan with a nice new handheld electric power drill. These are spectacular, and everybody should have one in their birthday present. The difference between installing a painting neatly and smartly onto a plasterboard wall, or causing the plasterboard to fall off in dusty, crumbly lumps just when the in-laws are about to come to dinner, is usually not about the tool. It's nearly always about the skill of the artisan and how they make use of that tool. So I speak from experience, or rather lack of it. But I have to say that with the advent of new power drills, such as the one in the picture, the ability for skills to meet the lack of skill within an artisan is enhanced. We do better now with these things. So 2 years ago, Jaggaer and EdgeVerve embarked on a global technology partnership to bring to our customers the best of procurement and the best of intelligent automation. And jointly, we provide spectacularly good tools as well as proven skills. And it's the skill sets that are at least a major differentiator in what we do together. But let me quickly and briefly introduce you to EdgeVerve. So EdgeVerve is as I said earlier, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Infosys. Infosys, if you don't know, is about a $12 billion international company employing about 240,000 people. It's a very significant player. And we are the product arm of Infosys. We have offices throughout the globe, 85 sales offices, 6,500 employees, 500 plus customer installations, and a presence in about 100 companies. Okay, so that's a quick overview, and I didn't want to spend too much time on that because this talk really is about the automation journey. So journeys towards intelligent automation, as I said, although automation has the ability to dramatically improve efficiency, reduce costs, and help companies innovate, it also presents several unique challenges. Companies often have difficulty selecting the right process to automate. And frankly, they struggle scaling up their automation efforts beyond the first low-hanging fruit. The automation journey should continually progress and not just be a single discrete event. This means that companies must always be looking for new ways to optimize their automation solutions and find new processes to automate. It's not without its challenges to try and work out how to do that. But if we start by looking at what the benefit will be. So intelligent automation can completely transform enterprise processes and allow companies to automate tasks at scale that before would have required human workers. So as probably most of us are, I am a long haul flyer regularly for work, and but for COVID, I would have been with you today in Dubai, and I would have been probably on an A380, with either Emirates or Qatar or Muscat Airlines. And that aeroplane is formidably driven by automation. The thought of a single human being driving that magnificent aircraft down to land safely just doesn't even, it's beyond our consideration. So automation is everywhere. And automation scales up new range of possibilities for automation, expands the scope of automation significantly. It's critical for companies to incorporate these new technologies into their automation strategy so they can enable progress on this journey. This journey of automation really can be defined in 5 levels of automation. I know that there is a standards institution about the 7 levels of automation, but I've grouped them together into this. So in order to overcome the limitation of discrete automation, where the input defines the output, such as motor vehicle manufacturing, if you like, a production line is there, all the components of a production line are sitting there waiting and are assembled. This is discrete automation. And robotic process automation, which is really a virtual example of that. Companies can should harness the power of intelligent automation. So today, intelligent automation can analyze unstructured data, interact with customers, and make critical decisions, and further enabling the automation journey. Understanding the limitations and opportunities of RPA and deterministic automation is actually the very first step on a successful automation journey. But there are challenges and which prevent companies from progressing and hinder them from becoming an intelligent enterprise. By identifying potential problems and taking proactive steps to, address them, companies are better prepared to ensure they optimize their automation solutions and lead the competition and get going. Selecting the right processes is a major challenge. One of the first and most significant problems most companies face when implementing an automation strategy is process selection. Finding the right processes to automate can be difficult, it can be time consuming and error prone. And although identifying low-hanging fruit is often quite easy, it becomes more difficult to find processes that would benefit from automation as implementations mature. If you like, we can give simple automation tools to all of our staff and have them automate desktop operations. But when SAP has an upgrade, when Oracle has its upgrade, you might find that a lot of that automation then becomes quite redundant because it's not being controlled by IT. And it's pretty important that this be done in with rigor and control. So many of these processes, that are thought of that to be automated, are done by taking account of. We need to take account of variations and in the scenarios in process selection. Processes can often take multiple forms as well. So depending on a wide variety of factors, it is important that process discovery techniques account for these variations. The most common method of process discovery in enterprises is actually manual. And with business process changing all the time, manual process discovery doesn't prove to be very effective, as the documentation, as you can imagine, becomes outdated quite quickly. Usually, a manual method of interviewing subject matter experts and agents, along with gathering data from process documents, is used for identifying the right process for automation. This method suffers from various disadvantages that affect not only the efficiency, but also the cost and time involved in setup and implementation. And a really good example is often a process is designed and the operatives get on with that process, but quickly they realize that in order to fulfill that process in a good, timely manner, they find really effective shortcuts. And those shortcuts are never put into the manual processes, but the operatives sometimes know how those shortcuts work. So we need a system that can discover what the processes genuinely are. So enterprises should understand business process data also at a granular level and create a strong automation strategy. But how should this be done? And I completely agree with Georg. Understanding your data and getting that right is the first step on the journey. So a tool like our AssistEdge Process Discovery can help in achieving just this. It has a capability to track keystrokes and apply neural network algorithms to create insightful business maps. The Process Discovery toolset helps enterprises get access to granular data. The Process Discovery bot monitors organizations' business processes for a specific period. They run on employee machines in a GDPR-compliant, non-intrusive way without hampering daily work, and collecting data on how the organization uses various applications to perform its tasks. AI then analyzes that data, recommending the best contenders for automation by weighing up the time, the effort, and resources that can be optimized and saved. It then generates automation workflows that can be moved to an automation tool for a neat, seamless automation journey. If done well, the process discovery tool leads to visibility of ownership for specific process steps, as well as overall process across the organization. By giving fewer people actually access to business process information, it is possible to trim down risks as well. Moreover, process maps help to understand if the suggested changes will add value to the business, instead of a long of a wait and watch method that consumes time and effort. Process discovery enables a measurable way for business improvements, avoiding unnecessary repetitions or other inefficiencies. Also, with less human resources, the automation development costs go down significantly. Expanding RPA requires data analysis that takes significant time if done manually. So with the insights generated through process discovery, organizations can make intelligent decisions on which processes to automate next. It ensures that automation solutions evolves to unlock further growth and performance with minimal use of resources and time. This is key. Excuse me. So then, armed with, let's say, empirical data-based business process maps, this helps enterprises navigate their automation journey from value creation to realization. The business process maps created by capturing user keystrokes cover all process exceptions. Variations provide visibility and options to scale. This helps in maximizing the expected ROI from the automation program. So as I said, that subject matter expert who'd found the workaround, this will be recorded, and that workaround may actually mean that latency associated with opening up a particular application or waiting for a particular password or activation can be understood and optimized. Okay, so moving on a little bit then is we have this opportunity for unattended, attended, and cognitive automation. So once process have been chosen, companies can begin implementing deterministic rule-based automation. This is automating a set of repetitive and rule-based tasks that help an enterprise save time, effort, and cost while increasing productivity and efficiency. These solutions are the first step in developing mature automations across the company before implementing more intelligent solutions, very much in line with what Georg was saying. Start simple and build up, learn, win experience, and then more complex solutions suddenly become a little bit more feasible and simpler to do. Having a combined unattended and attended approach is crucial to a comprehensive automation strategy. By maximizing the number of processes that are fully automated while utilizing human input for task components that automations cannot handle, companies can ensure that they get the most out of their implementation. Many RPA solutions require human input or oversight during some portion of the business process. These attended solutions allow companies to harness the power of automation for tasks that the technology is not yet able to fully automate. In many cases, these include front office processes, such as customer interactions, in which the bot delivers customer data in real time to an agent interacting with a customer. We know this, we use this all the time. This can dramatically improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the human worker. So fully unattended solutions more frequently occur in back office processes. Generally, they act based on trigger events and may perform tasks such as automating performance basics, IT maintenance on systems. That's a very good use case. So cognitive automation. So AI and machine learning capabilities can be viewed as cognitive tools and are at the forefront of automation innovation. Companies looking to expand the capabilities of their automation implementation and progress on the automation journey must utilize these cognitive tools to drive business goals eventually. Once attended and unattended automations have been implemented, I say once they've been implemented, The companies can then harness the vast amounts of data that these attended and unattended automations generate to help intelligent solutions learn how to perform the more complicated tasks, propensity analysis, if you like. This allows for greatly expanded automation capabilities in the enterprise. Enterprises must embrace new solutions, quite clearly, and learn how to effectively integrate deterministic and AI-based solutions into their business processes. This means expanding process discovery to include tasks that may have been previously impossible to automate. And the integration of AI and automation enables an enterprise to take a much wider range of tasks than deterministic models, including reading potentially handwriting documents or handwritten documents, and engaging in a more complicated customer service interaction. This dramatically grows the number of business processes viable for automation, improves automation overall efficiency. So the final stage of the automation journey is a unified digital workforce in which bots and humans work effectively together. This automation augmented workforce can perform tasks more quickly, at a lower cost, and with fewer mistakes, and dramatically improve the customer experience that we all strive for. Human workers can focus on innovating and delivering greater value to the company, while bots rapidly and reliably perform routine tasks. However, it is important for companies to have effective strategies and systems in place to manage the digital workforce, allowing humans and bots to work together cohesively. This will allow companies to deliver better, more cost-effective products and services to customers and gain a significant advantage over the competition. So in summary, customers need to be able to engage with technology partners who have an effective partnership to deliver solutions. AI-enabled automation is critical to the success of a modern enterprise. In order to be successful on the automation journey, it's crucial that leaders develop a roadmap for success. So this roadmap is key. The automation journey may include certain risks and pitfalls. As Georg said, it's very important to learn from mistakes and move on quickly. Being aware of these potential issues and proactively working to address them can make the difference between automation success and failure. The team who are delivering automations must be motivated to know that not all the time will they be successful, but they must understand all the time why they're not successful. On the journey to intelligent automation, companies must discover new processes to automate, embrace new technologies, and implement systems to orchestrate solutions. This helps create a more comprehensive, forward-thinking approach to automation in the enterprise, because technology is constantly evolving. And I know that because I no longer have to do punch card operations. So having an effective best-of-breed partnership, such as that of Jaggaer and EdgeVerve, can help companies achieve success in an increasingly competitive market. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back through to Rob.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. And we'll move on now to Q&A. If you have a question, please remember to put it into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. But first of all, I want to ask Georg, I want to ask you a question actually, as we get going on this, which is, now you talked about, during your presentation, you talked about this idea of some companies still preferring to use Excel. And it's interesting because I spend a lot of time talking to organizations in the construction sector, where I've heard this comment many times when it comes to how companies try to plan their functions and move forward. So if a company is, how do you actually even convince a company? How does a company know when it hasn't got the right processes in place? Because I do wonder sometimes if a company realizes that what they're doing is not as efficient as it could be.
So that's a very good question. When you think about it, what is one of the major benefits that you get with Excel? You don't have to think a lot before you start doing it. Honestly, you can do everything with it, right? So I can run my financial reporting on it. I can do my personal calendar with Excel if I like. I can do everything with it, right? And I believe this is what's very appealing to a lot of organizations. And this is why I stressed so much the point before, start thinking with the why, okay? Why you want to achieve certain goals. This is where you need to start. So define the target of where it is that you want, and then you have to start building from top to bottom. And this is, I believe, where a lot of organizations fail, honestly, because they don't think about it that way. They change over time. And think about if you were an architect and you were building a house, okay? You can't change over time, right? Your foundation needs to match your first story and your second story and the roof that you have. You can't start building and then say, oh, damn it, now the roof doesn't fit as I wanted, I need to change, right? And this is very appealing with Excel, because you can change the process. I mean, adding a column is super easy in Excel, right? I mean, it's 2 mouse clicks, but this is not how digitalization works. And I believe it is our responsibility as people coming from the industry, educating our customers why it's important to start differently, why to start with the why, yeah? And then build it from there, because the benefits are undoubtedly there, right? But we need to educate our customers more on that. That's my personal belief.
Well, and I think one of the points that Julian made as well, which really resonated for me, was talking about data, because again, I think that that's an area where a lot of companies struggle. I don't think they think enough about how they're going to manage their data, where it's going to be stored, and all the different sources that it's going to come from, because it's not like 10, 20 years ago. We carry a database effectively in our pockets with our phone. So, you know, again, Julian, how much work needs to be done up front, thinking about data, who owns the data, where it's stored, how do you protect it, so that you can then actually use it in a way that you've both been talking about?
It's a good question, and you're raising it in exactly the right way. The challenge for data is you know, do we have data puddles, data ponds, lakes, or in fact oceans? And understanding that is key. And really what we mostly have is data puddles collected into vast oceans. Trying to address that bit puddle by puddle is regrettably the only way to do that. There are some tools which can help with that. And so one tool that we have a very close relationship with Jaggaer is a tool called contracts analysis, where we can take millions of documents and put them through a artificial intelligence and analytics tool and train it to understand the nature of what a contract is saying. So we can ask all the questions so we can ask all the contracts questions that we want to have answered before engaging with some level of procurement exercise. So that would be an example where we are able to collectivize all those small ponds into an ocean and answer the question. So it's possible, but in that case, that's not a particularly expensive exercise, but to gather all the data from the ocean is a profoundly expensive exercise, and it's complicated beyond the benefit on the short term. So the task in my mind is very much to address the pond at a small level, understand which group can have their data liberalized and managed, and use artificial intelligence to produce some level of cognitive decision-making capability. So that would be the way that I address that, is find your pond that you can manage.
So in other words, what you're saying is identify maybe what your crucial data is and where that's stored, deal with that first, and then gradually spread out. Because also you don't want these ponds, as you call them. I mean, effectively, you're talking about silos, and you know, you need this all interconnected and pulled together so that you can then do, I mean, Georg, I think it was you that was talking about pattern recognition. You can't do that if you don't have all your data in the right places, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I might, I mean, I'm signing everything that Jake just said, absolutely. And for me, it's so important. We live in a connected world, right? And all the information that we have is not in silos, yeah? Because we need to access all those different types of information to make the right decision. I mean, think about your personal experience. When I think about like driving to the office, yeah, I have a weather report that I know, at least where I'm coming from Austria here, yeah, is snow on the road, right? Are there any congestions? Yeah, so I was in a traffic jam this morning. I need different types of information to make the right decision. Yeah, probably it's better for me today to take the train and not the car, yeah, because of all of those connected informations. And the same is true for the business world. It's not just one silo that gives me all the answers.
Yeah, and I think also, I don't think people really think enough about how they're going to store that data, its longevity, how they access it in the future as well. I think that's a very good point, Julian.
Yeah, I'd add to that what Georg just said is you make a really good point there. Having your data, your relevant data in a system where the individual can ask a question pertaining to their particular circumstance is very key. So you want to know what the weather is for you on your road. You're not interested in the road in the Bremer Pass. You want the information on the road as you drive into into your hometown. So, but you do want all of the data available because they relate to each other. So a tool like contracts analysis does that. You can put millions of documents into it and then train it and then ask pretty much free text questions, free language questions about all of the data. And it'll come up with a statistical relevance. This is 99% interesting to the question you've asked, or it could be this is 1% just irrelevant. And tools can do that, and it's a really exciting option for understanding how data is managed.
And then once you start to use that, once you start to pull all of this together, once you start trying to get the real power from the software that you have been talking about today, how do you make sure that people are going on that journey? Because really you're talking about a transformation in the way companies do business. And I spent a long time as a business IT journalist, and I saw so many projects fall over because people just hadn't been taken on that journey, and they felt that when they got to the end, when it was rolled out, it didn't actually do what they needed it to do, and they were being forced to work in ways they didn't want to work. Now, sometimes that just happens. Sometimes we have to accept that we need to change how we work, but I think you need to take people along that journey, don't you? And how easy is that? How often do you see that happening? George? Go.
Yeah. I think it all comes back to one very, very basic thing, which is trust. Okay? This is the most important thing in my personal point of view. Let's think back, I don't know, 15 years, okay? When I used one of those mobile navigation devices, yeah, that I had back then, yeah? I don't know how often it was that I ended up somewhere, yeah, that I could not really drive through, yeah? But the damn system told me that I need to go through that street, right? So, but the trust was not there. Think about it today, yeah? When I drive in my car, I press a button, say, I want to go to the airport, yeah? And then I know with 99% certainty, it will find not just the right road, but also the best road with the current conditions in terms of traffic and everything. Yeah. And I have trust in the system. And this is why I rely on it and why I use it. And so it's key for everything that's transforming a business, that there is a certain trust. This is also why I talked before, like this garbage in, garbage out type of example, right? Whenever we want to automate, garbage in means way more garbage out. So we have to be so careful about it, about how we're going to train those systems. And we need to establish the trust. This is also why I believe those smaller steps are so important, that we learn to trust the system and also correct anything if something does not go right? So for me, it's 100% trust.
Okay, and I'd add into that my experience of the late 90s. If people remember, late 90s, there wasn't an internet that you could trade from. Your bank was a building, and it was physical and made of bricks. And the desire for IT departments within banks to create an online facility was nil, actually. And people knew that if they didn't do that, they were missing an opportunity, and they didn't know what the opportunity led to because it just didn't exist. And companies like the one I was with at the time, Sun Microsystems, was a pioneer saying, you know, in 10 years' time, this will all look really different, and you're either going to be irrelevant or a pioneer. So this trust thing became a big factor, and groupthink within large enterprises decided we're not going to do anything. And many companies did nothing until it was very nearly too late and ran to the party late in the piece. Some companies, and one I actually worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers, if you don't mind me saying, what we did is we decided to implement a whole new bank in another country. And the purpose of implementing this whole new bank, which was a digital bank, was purely and simply to experiment with how a digital bank might work and how the consumers might work. So we set up a whole new bank in Spain. It was a British company that did this. And once it was successful, it took about 2 years, we then picked it up and showed it back to this rather staid high street bank and said, this is what the future looks like. Now, you couldn't sell the trust to begin with. You had to persuade them through show and see and how. And I'm at fault for that too. I hung on to my BlackBerry phone until WhatsApp kicked me off, because I loved my BlackBerry phone. And eventually I think, my goodness, how did that happen? You know, and so it's about trust. I liked it, I trusted it, I wanted it, but trust in change is also key, and allowing yourself to explore and to move forward. So this is not an easy task, but everybody should be exploring the change because it's a fundamental success criteria as we move forward. This is not an option. This is a fundamental. And of course, this year has been a spectacular example of that. And we could talk for a long time about that, you know. So change is an imperative for sure.
And Julian, just sticking with you for a second. So you talked in your presentation about intelligent automation, and I just wanted to try and get a little bit more information and detail really in terms of how this works and what change and what benefits this brings to an organization. Okay, so the intelligent automation is a term we use to say that RPA, automation, and artificial intelligence are at some level co-working together to produce an intelligent automation scenario. So you can conceive it as a consumer. Let's always start with the consumer because they're the people who are always right. They want to make a decision on products, and because we're all high street people or virtual high street people at the moment. An example would be if you buy this product online, the retailer has a choice to say, you wanted a size medium, I'm going to ship you a size medium. Or the retailer can ask, would you mind would you mind if we ask how tall you are, what your weight is in kilos, and what your type of lifestyle is? Because they'll add that to the relevance of the question, as a personal shopper would do in a really good outlet, as you would probably get in Dubai actually, and that are far and few between in the UK. And the personal shopper would ask those sort of questions and say, well, actually, for somebody of your lifestyle, size and shape, generally they don't buy the medium, they buy the small. And so I would like to give you both the small and the medium and send that off. And then the consumer thinks, wow, what a great experience that was. They asked the right questions. Now, there's not a human being asking the questions. It's a piece of intelligent automation that's asking the questions. And it goes into a pond of people who bought medium, who were of that height, sent it back because it was too big and they wanted the smaller one. So let's take a bet and send them both, because the cost of doing so is so small and the customer satisfaction is so high, and you end up with very loyal customers and great repeat business. So I know it's very easy to talk about retail because we all do it, but it's, you know, there's a good case in point. Behind the scenes, there's that big machine working very effectively, saying the first sale, we don't know what the propensity analysis is, but the 100,000th sale, we sure know that if you're this height and weight and whatever, you need a small, not a medium. Okay, and then Georg, final question to you. You talked about risk analysis during your presentation, and I wondered if maybe you could give an example of how an organization should approach this? What sort of questions should they be asking? What steps should they be taking to make sure that they're doing it in a good way, in a way that will give them correct answers maybe, and not the answers they hoped to get?
Yeah. So when I think about risk in general, you can basically segment it into different areas of risk, right? So there is financial risk, there is supply chain risk, country risk, there is cybersecurity becoming way more important, sustainability, all that sort of stuff, right? So risk is not this one monolithic thing, right? So it's different areas. But let's say you have all of that information, you roll it up. And the way that we do it is we work with a lot of partners that are specialists in those certain risk areas, right? To really get those. Because we as a procurement software vendor, we don't have the risk, right? But there are companies out there that have this, that manage this, but we need it. Again, there's a very good example of connected types of information. So let's say you roll it up and then you have it in the system. A very effective way to use it is, or a very ineffective way, let's start with that, is simply displaying this information. Honestly, that's the most boring and unnecessary thing that you can do with it, okay? What really makes sense, you need to use the data to drive behavior, okay? This is really what we're trying to do here. And that's also how we integrate this data into the system. Yes, of course you can display it, no problem. But when it's really important is, I believe there are two main events when this, probably three events where it becomes really relevant to have access to this data. For me, number one is, whenever I'm doing a sourcing decision, I need to know the risk associated with this, okay? So you also have like internal risks about this, your products and so on. But when you buy it, at least you wanna know what the risk is that you get into by awarding a vendor with this. So we make the risk visible on your side-by-side comparison of quotes. And we actually encourage our customers not to simply, and I know procurement people are gonna freak out what I'm saying right now, don't just award by the lowest price, okay? You're buying a package, and this package means you buy a product, but you buy it from a company that has certain risk. So probably it's better for you to buy at a higher price, but it's less risky, okay? This is something that you need to factor in. So this is why we show it when you do an awarding. Next step, where it's also really important for me, is when you define your category strategy and you break it down to your suppliers. So your individual supplier strategy per category should be influenced by the risk, right? So which of these companies would you like to develop to become probably a strategic partner? Won't be the ones with the highest risk, I guess, yeah? This is what you should do. And the third one, what I added later, I believe is also when you do like scorecarding of suppliers. This is also where it should have influence, but this is now, it spirals back, right? Because you can use that data there. My final word on this is primarily, we're talking a lot about like data and data residency and stuff like this before. Data is super important because it's the foundation of everything. But a couple of years ago, like big data was this huge thing where everyone was talking about, okay? Let's think about it just 1 second. Data or big data is just a pile of a lot of data. Okay, so the benefit doesn't really lie in the data itself. It relies on the algorithms that you then use on top of this data. So coming back to what Jake just said, right? So yes, I might know that people with that height and that weight, yeah, choose an S or an M, yeah, but what I really need is the algorithm who understands that and then gives me the right information and helps me to really do something with it. So I would actually argue that the algorithm is equally as important as the data, if not more important.
Okay, and Julian, I can see you nodding there.
Yeah, you know, and normally we have to wait until the algorithm has been learnt and understood. But if I suspect the trading of an algorithm will one day be key, because, you know, as a new shop owner or as a company new to buying components for building an oil rig, you may not have the experience yet of that components and the data, but if you had the algorithm that has already got the experience, you get a fast start into that process.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, look, gentlemen, thank you very much, Julian and Georg. Really very interesting presentations, and I think you dove into the whole area of preparing procurement for artificial intelligence and for intelligent automation. I think it's an area that is clearly going to grow more and more, and people are going to have a lot of questions, I think, in the future as they start to understand it more. I think anything like this, initially, people maybe, even if they're not skeptical, they're interested, but they're a little unsure and they feel their way in, don't they? So thank you for your presentations. The presentations will be made available. They will be sent out as a link to everybody who has registered for this webinar. And finally, thank you very much for your attendance. And with that, goodbye.